Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. The new Wasteless World Talks are here, and today not only with Bill and Kevin, but Martin Reisny join us. He's joining us from Czech Republic, so we have here USA, Denmark, Czech Republic twice. And the topic today is meaning. And we start the same way as every time, Bill. So if you close your eyes and you hear the term meaning, what came to your mind first?
Another word, purpose. When we start any client engagement, we dwell a bit on the purpose, which is the meaning. For example, why did I get out of bed this morning? Why? And it changes over time. And when I was younger and had three little kids running around the house, my purpose was very different. My meaning was very different, the meaning of my life, than it is today. Empty nesters, condo, very different now.
Okay, so thanks a lot. Kevin, you are the second usually, and then we let Martin.
I think of a Danish word, meaning, which I don't know if it's an old Viking word that we've adopted into the English language. But in Danish, it's quite interesting because meaning means opinion. So they ask, if they ask, what is your meaning? They're asking, what is your opinion? And I think this is really fascinating because you can see a direct route back to a more basic meaning of the word meaning.
That's interesting. And Martin, what about you?
Well, actually, the first thing that occurred to me as somebody who I've studied media theory. So actually, the first thing that I thought of was more of a semantics thing, that like a meaning is a technical thing. You try to deconstruct words, and that can be done in many different ways, and there's many different categories. But then I also thought about purpose, just like Bill. And so for me, I guess the most interesting thing is maybe the contrast between the technicalities of meaning and the essence, the quality of meaning that's somewhat ineffable.
Bill and Kevin knows it, but I have usually the same topic 4 hours earlier. It's a global meetup, it's LinkedIn audio generally, and we had it today as well, and it was very interesting because we came very close, or firstly, we came to the meaning of life, then we are trying to investigate, and we generally finish with humanity, and we spend a lot of time discussing about artificial intelligence. And that's my next question. So I will start with you, Martin. So what is the meaning of artificial intelligence?
Wow, really simple questions today. Did the background give it away? Doing some AI stuff. So the meaning of AI. Well, actually, it's a big question whether or not the artificial intelligence actually has any kind of awareness or consciousness, or could possibly have. And it might be necessary for it to have something like that, some kind of experience, to be able to experience meaning at all. Because what it does currently, as most engineers see it, is really the semantics thing. It's just trying to predict the next word, or a visual equivalent of that for the images, some kind of pattern. And it's basically just guessing statistically, and it's really going for the most average thing that like most people would agree this kind of thing makes sense right now. So it's also entirely dependent on what it was learning on, what kind of data it used to train. So if, for example, the data it used to train was racist, then it's just obvious to the AI that racism is a great idea, and it's a completely valid way of approaching the world, just because it just can't tell the difference. So right now, I think AI, the meaning of AI, is really, I think, quite artificial. Really emphasis on artificial, but it's a big open question of like where the technology can go. Maybe it could become aware and then who knows?
I see you, Bill, nodding. So do you agree with that, or you see the meaning of AI with different eyes?
So with all the technological um, disruptors that we have been introduced to in the last year or decade, my theory is that they have no meaning to society. They in themselves have no meaning to society. Sort of like my wife and the thought of time. But they are just shiny objects. There's something that we can talk about. We can we've talked about AI, until I almost don't even want to talk about it anymore. But it doesn't affect society. What affects society is the ripple effects of these shiny objects. So the comparison that I make is with autonomous vehicles, for example. I would love to have a driverless car out in my driveway. I'd like to show my friends and my family, my neighbors, look, see, it has no steering wheel. We could talk about it all day long. But it in itself doesn't affect society. What affects society are the ripple effects of the shiny object. So, for example, ripple effects of the autonomous vehicle would be 1,000 times fewer traffic accidents. And because we're not, traffic fatalities. And since we're not having accidents, then we don't need as many doctors in the emergency room. We don't need as many lawyers suing each other all the time, and on and on and on. And then there's ripple effects, the ripple effects. So it's the same thing with AI. In itself, it means nothing. We saw AI in 2001: A Space Odyssey 25 years ago. But AI, but what does affect society is the ripple effects. What are we now able to do? What are we now, how is life changing now in all the different ways? And there's hundreds and thousands of ripple effects off the AI. But I don't want to get caught up in talking about and rehashing, uh, AI. So that's my response, Michael. That's my reaction. That it's not as important as we say it is, and yet the ripple effects are 1,000 times more important than what we realize today. So the only way we're going to realize them is to talk about them, I guess. But let's not talk about AI itself. Let's talk about what we're going to be able to do because AI is here.
Kevin, your opinion?
Well, as AI has no intelligence, it has in itself no meaning. It cannot form its own meaning because it doesn't have its own intelligence. So I still think we need to change the name of AI to pattern paste machine one way or another. I saw an interesting thing from Russia. There's a Russian filmmaker called Birchpunk, and they make satirical films about the state of Russian technology. And they made a sketch about Russian AI. And the interesting thing about it, to make it more human, it only works if someone is looking at it.
Is it possible that the current meaning or the reason, if I use different word, of existing AI is to, again, for the giants to find a tool to enslave the others much more easier, because the AI will do it for you. AI is the new God, so, and you describe it well, Bill. So it's not about AI itself. It's about the consequences, and it's not about God in a religion. It's about the way how it's expressed. Different religions, the words of God or the gods. I don't want to be religious in here, but and it seems to me to be very similar, because we are being served in such a huge quantities this information. Just few minutes before we started, I get a very interesting news. You know that Sam Brinkman, the guy who has this crypto burst, gets 25 years sentence, I think. And just few minutes ago, I received an information that a Turkish guy on a very similar level, just very different in a financial point, he just left with 45 million euro. He got 1,117 years sentence. I think he will maybe reach the Guinness Book of Records. I don't know if he will be there before or after the sentence, not sure. But he got really 1,117 years. And I think why I mentioned it, this is exactly this type of news we are being overwhelmed. We are getting more and more of these informations, not to concentrate on the real meaning of life.
I think going back to one of your points, Michael, for the giants, we're quite expensive creatures to keep. You know, we have to, we cost them money, we affect their profit. So the more they can get machines to do things for free or for cheap, the better it is for the giants. So of course they're looking for any reason to save money.
The question is, the money is paid at the end by humans who consume it. Do you think that it will be at the end that machines will produce and machines will consume? Humans will not be needed there anymore.
I'm sure they'll find a way to make them pay income tax.
What do you think, Martin?
Well, this is actually a very important question going forward, precisely because the current model is based on, or economic model broadly, is based on consumption. And the machines can't actually do the consumption part, really, at least within our current understanding of how like anything makes economic sense. So they can do the production part, the work. So that's why there are many people who argue that something like universal basic income might be needed, because you still need to have the humans who are doing the consumption, or otherwise the fact that the machines can do the production is kind of pointless economically, because you need to have some sort of like a mathematical way to have the economy make sense. So if it's not going to be the universal basic income, there has to be some other reimagining of the model. And I think the most toxic one, which actually is unfortunately shared by some of the leading technologists who are working on AI, is that basically like, yeah, so the machines will replace humans because, you know, humans are ultimately inferior. That's some future version of artificial intelligence. So who cares? You know, something better, that's AI, will exist in the future and will supplant humans. So that I would say, obviously, to most humans is not a great vision of the future or acceptable on any level. So yeah, I don't necessarily think anybody has a really great answer to this, but something will need to be reimagined or changed, or otherwise the economics of this are not going to make any sense.
Bill, what do you think about it? I think that what is needed to change is the economy and the system from roots.
And I think we're headed in that direction slowly. But there are many optimistic data points out there that say that we are not the same economy, the same society that we were 20 or 50 years ago or something. I think we're headed to a time very shortly. We'll be at the 32-hour work week. We'll be at a point where, look, for example, look at how many companies, businesses there are in the world. Uh, 50 years ago, there were several very, very large companies. Today, we have millions of very, very small companies, all of whom have their have a power that their fathers and grandfathers did not have, because they control to some extent a lot of their destiny, more than simply going to the factory and working for the man for 40 years and then retiring with a pension and a gold watch. So that is encouraging, I think. The labor unions and the power of the people, because we now have access to more information, we have access to more education, excuse me, than we have in the past. I think the model is changing. And I think that when we are no longer beating ourselves to death, working 60 hours a week, and coming home exhausted and falling into bed, and we can look around and we can say, um, that would make a wonderful picture. Let me see if I can draw that or write that or build that. And we can use our own mind, which I think we're doing more now than we did when we were engaged totally in bringing home a paycheck. I think that it's changing. And at the same time, I think that we're taking power back from the giants.
Kevin,
Going on from what Bill said, I was thinking that in an ideal world, looking back to an unideal world, but ancient Greece, where they had slaves do their work for them, freed the Greeks up to think. So a lot of great thinkers come from ancient Greece because they had the time to do it. I think at the same time people were thinking in ancient Greece, the Brits were scraping around in the mud trying to grow turnips. They had no time to think about anything but where tomorrow's meal was coming from. So one ideal benefit from AI would be to free us up to think, to actually use this amazing brain that we all have and explore that, because there's nothing left on the planet to explore.
next easy question for you, Martin. What is the meaning of your life?
I'm sorry, come again?
What is the meaning of your life?
Right. I just didn't hear one letter in that, so I wasn't sure. Meaning of life. Wow.
Of your life.
That's yeah.
Not of life, of your life.
Yeah, still doesn't make the question fundamentally easier. Unfortunately. Yeah. So meaning of my life. Well, for me, I guess the really important thing is, always learning, always trying to understand more, always improving. If I had to narrow it down to something, then I guess for me it would be that.
Did you describe meaning? That's a question.
Okay,
you do not have to answer now. Bill, what is the meaning of your life? I know it's a difficult question, of course.
I'm at a different stage of life than each of you are. So my answer may be different than it might have been 20 years ago. But the meaning of my life is to gather things, people, ideas close to me that bring me joy. I'm on the search for joy. And I refer you to the Japanese lady who helps to declutter, to unclutter your closet, right? Marie Kondo with a K. And she says, take everything out of your closet, put it on your bed. Hold up the first piece of clothing and ask yourself, does this bring me joy? If it doesn't, then give it to somebody who needs it. If it does, then put it back in the closet. So for the last 5 years, I have been looking at each of my friends and my acquaintances and each of the tasks that I do or each of the activities that I do, and I hold it up and I say to myself, does this bring me joy? And if it doesn't, I move it to the outer circle away. If it does, I move it closer. And right now, that's the purpose of my life, is to bring things of joy closer to me.
Kevin, the same question for you.
Actually, I was thinking, I got two answers because I split the answers slightly. The meaning, the point of my life, if you ask nature, is to pass on DNA. But that's not meaning. That's something completely different. That's very sort of mechanical. The meaning must be extremely personal. You know, each of us has a different meaning to our lives. If we make it or we're given it or circumstances presents it. So for me, I would like to think that the meaning is to try and find out what the hell the meaning is. Because I have no idea, but I would like to know.
Do you really want to know? Do you want to reach the moment when you know? Because, you know, usually if you reach the goal, there will be no other. It will become empty. So my goal, you know it, all of you know it, to build Wasteless World for All. I said it 11 years ago, and I just found a letter from my granddad, which he gave me to my 50th birthday. And it was the last birthday which I celebrate with him. We did not know at that time. And he generally said that he believed that I will succeed. And even he wrote that please keep in mind that there will be troubles, but you will overcome them. So for me, he is the big teacher, and the meaning of his life was teaching the others to the love to education and to languages, generally these two, and included in that was the love to human. And it was so interesting. And I found it yesterday. It was not my intention, but I have it somewhere between invoices, and I find it because I was looking for something. And so I keep it here on site. That's interesting because, you know, I think that everyone has its meaning. And the question is whether we forgot about it because we have to do, as you describe it, Bill, we have to do work because we have to feed the family and we have to spend in work and deliver the results and so on. I just had a yesterday talks about nothing with the manager of one automotive company. And she said, Mr. Rada, I have so many appointments in a calendar. I don't have time to work. It's one after the other. So I think that many people lost their meaning. It's hard to define it, but still, there has to be something which is much bigger than just the salary which I get. And the question is whether what is needed for the people to recognize this and to learn how to get over it, how to find their meaning again. And I don't know the answer, but I know that our talks are leading toward it. So, and Martin, you know my questions are no easy, so you cannot say that you did not expect it. So, okay, so we talk about artificial intelligence, we talk about meaning of our life. If I take meaning and the term meaningful, and there is the opposite is meaningless. Is it so? Is it the meaningless, the opposite of meaningful? In English, please tell me because I'm not sure.
Well,
Okay.
it depends. It depends on the conception of it. Well, if you want to sort of break it down a little bit, like semantically, the meaningless doesn't necessarily have to be an opposite, some sort of like anti-meaning. It can be just an absence of meaning. And so there's the question of what does it mean for something to have meaning? And then you get into this sort of philosophical, recursive, complicated discussions, because meaning, like, for instance, from what point of view is it the meaning? Like, because meaning can also be dependent on to whom the meaning exists, and the same one situation or a thing, an object or an experience can have simultaneously entirely different meanings or be meaningless to several different parties that are observing it from different vantage points. So this is something that gets, but it is like really navel gazing sometimes in the sort of theoretical discourse about this. So it's a bit getting into the weeds. But I think personally the main opposition is between sort of the people who believe that things have inherent meaning, and that like people are like born with some sort of inherent role or meaning in life. It could be like from some religious or scientific point of view. And people like existentialists who believe that it's all made up pretty much, but the sort of positive existentialists believe that you make it up, that you decide what the meaning of your life is, you create it. So basically, it's sort of the artist who makes the meaning and everything. But also then nihilists, who are the really only sort of group that's that decided pretty much that nothing has any meaning, sort of negative outlook, that everything is devoid of it. But I personally never see anything sort of constructive in this approach. So for me personally, there's nothing really such as meaninglessness, because everything always necessarily has multiple different layers or kinds of meaning for everybody who's attached to any phenomenon.
Why I was asking, because I came across Carl Gustav Jung interview 1959, and he said at the end of the interview, the man cannot live meaningless life. And at that moment, I was already for 5 years doing what I'm doing. And at this moment, I recognized that 5 years ago, I found the meaning of my life. And this is why I asked, because my English is not so good and sometimes I'm confused. This is why I'm even happy about the explanation. Do you agree with that from your perspective, the US perspective, and then the British perspective, that it is not the opposite?
It's not the opposite. I like the way that Martin describes that, and especially the part that it's different for everybody. Everybody's understanding of the world, everybody's self-meaning and purpose is a little bit different. And the meaning of life is more than I think we realize. So, for example, if I teach my grandson something, or a friend of mine hears my words or reads a book and says, yes, that helps me to understand it, then that's the meaning of my life. I know I was talking about joy before, but what brings me joy is to help people to understand life a little bit more than what they would have without me, or to teach somebody how to ride a bike, or to teach. That brings me joy. To help somebody understand, that brings me joy, and that's the meaning. For me, that's the meaning of life. But it's going to be different for you, and it's going to be different for Kevin and Martin. And I think, or maybe it's all the same. Maybe everybody would really like to have an effect on the world. That's a sort of immortality, perhaps, that if you have an effect on the world so that when you're dead, the world is a little bit better because you were there.
That's especially the last sentence is very strong. And I think this is something what can be part of the meaning. What do you think, Kevin?
I think building on from what both guys were saying, that meaning needs a value. It's an internal value or it's an external value. But going back to the original thing I said about meaning is an opinion, then that gives it the value. It's our own opinion. So from my point of view, my life may be meaningful. That's my opinion. From someone else's point of view, it's not so much meaningless, but pointless. And I think in a way, that's the interesting thing, that the opposite of meaningful would be pointless.
That's interesting. You know, all three of you are authors. All three of you publish a book or more books or even more. Is the writing for you and the sharing something which you will incorporate in this meaningfulness? Because I think all of you, it brings joy to write, and even bigger joy. You know, I cannot say that I have seen someone with my book, because I didn't write anyone, in their hand and just reading it. It must be wonderful. But what I have seen just recently and again, I see that the people use my words and they use it in the same meaning as I introduce it. Just recently, I read about the indulgences in connection to carbon emission trading. Even the United Nations use the term indulgences right now, you know, and nobody did before in this connection, or at least I did not know about it. So it's quite interesting. But is the writing for you part of the meaning, Martin?
Yeah, very much so, I would say, especially considering the subject matter of particularly what I wrote the book about, because I wrote a sort of, as you know, journalistic scientific book about issues related to astrology, and astrology is all about a certain perspective on meaning in life that is very sort of in the camp of essential, meaning that people are necessarily born into some sort of meaningful universe, and they have some sort of inherent meaning that they sort of are supposed to discover through life. So for me, the subject matter is actually a lot about even like the science of meaning in some specific sense. But also I sort of would find it pointless or a waste, to use another bad word, if I've sort of understood or learned or discovered something and then didn't share it with people. Because then what would be the point of that? I mean, I would have some joy from understanding a thing, but I think I can only increase meaningfulness by sharing.
Bill, do you write for people or do you write for yourself?
I absolutely do not write for people. I write for myself.
I do the same. Generally, I have to write because otherwise it will tear me in pieces. So it's not, it's my cure, generally. I am happy that the people read it, of course, but I'm not writing for them. What about you, Kevin?
I only write for myself. And the reason I do it is to find meaning in things.
You know, this is so great because many people think that the authors are writing for them. And they will even find the meaning inside the books. But we do not. But it is the transfer of the meaning. And I think this is something which we touch many times, the energy and all the things which I don't think it's, you know, I don't believe in coincidence. And Martin wrote a book and he just came to me a few minutes before this event and he asked me, will I be there? Yes, of course. And right now we are there at the moment when his books, which is 2 years old, 3 years old, even older, Martin?
Not older, actually. It's not more than 2 years.
So, and we are there, you know, and I think this is exactly the connection which is being established and which can be put and understandable, which can be understandable by people, because they just think that money is for them. No, for sure not. That politicians are there for them. Sorry. So, no. But we have to stop shame for doing things for ourselves. Because it does not mean when I do it for myself that I am somehow, what are the English words, that I'm selfish or something. No, it's not true. It's just the meaning is hidden in there, and we feel the meaning. And I think this is why it is so important that we talk about meaning, because if you look around and you listen to media makers and celebrities and politicians and everyone, they speak about meaning. It's the next hijacked word. They say it's meaning of my role as a president is to rule the country. Sorry. It's not so. At least I don't think so. But I think it was interesting topic. We have 3 more minutes to go, just to say. So each of you 1 minute. Yeah. What you will say.
I have a quick observation about meaning.
Okay.
And that is, the best meanings are usually hidden, and we have to find them.
And this brings the joy which Bill talked about. Martin?
Well, I'm personally very excited, actually, whether in a sort of a possible twist, it would be AI that would actually help us understand something more about meaning, eventually, in its own way.
I'm sure it is already freeing us up to be able to think, to be able to create, to be able to explore ourselves, that we were not able to do.
Will be interesting. Unfortunately, I feel that still, I don't think that AI is under control. I don't think so. It's already out in the world in some way. And unfortunately, our laziness do not let many look for the meaningfulness, but to make the work easier. I don't like to use the word easy in work environment. I say I like to do it efficient or effective, but easy it's not my favorite word, because in Czech it slips a little bit in a way how to go around, so the way how to improvise a lot of and so on. But I would like to really thank you for this great discussion about meaning, and I hope that everybody who will listen, we have less than 1 minute, that everybody who will listen will stop for a minute and think about the meaning of his or her. And let me thank you, all of you. Thank you for a great time, great discussion. Have a nice time, free of waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe, be free, be human, and live meaningful life. Thanks a lot, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Like,
Thanks, guys.